Welcome to this bite-sized video for the Digital Support Services T-Level, where we'll explore Assignment 3 for the Digital Infrastructure Occupational Specialism. This session is being delivered by myself, Helen Scanlon. I'm part of NCFE's Provider Development Team, and I'll be taking you through the assessment requirements, regulations and conditions. I'm joined today by our Digital Sector Manager, James Lane, who will add his subject specialist knowledge and experience. So hello, James, and thank you for collaborating with me on this bite-sized recording.
Hi, Helen, and as always, thanks for having me. I've worked on these for a number of years, and perhaps more importantly in this context, I come from the digital sector, having been at NCFE for about 4 years now. So I'm going to be adding some of the subject-specific flavour into this presentation, but also available for any of you that need either extra support with what we're talking about today, any setup, or just bouncing ideas off. So we'll have some contact details towards the end, and please do reach out if that's of any use to you.
Thanks, James. Okay, let's get started. So this assessment consists of 3 task-based assignments with a total duration of 24 hours and 30 minutes, and it's designed to assess the 3 performance outcomes shown, each of which indicates the knowledge and skills required to enable students to achieve threshold competence in the chosen occupational specialism. For each performance outcome, there will be a list of knowledge and skills. The knowledge statements show what the students need to know, and the skills are what they need to perform. Some of this content will build upon the content delivered in Year 1. So we'll be explaining the 3rd OS assignment for this recording, and we'll signpost you to the important documents and information on the NCFE website. The first of which are the key date schedule and the qualification-specific instructions for delivery. At the end of this recording, we'll share relevant links, including the ones to these 2 documents. So information today is taken from the tutor guidance and support documentation, and the information we'll provide shall help teachers to understand the requirements for the summative assessment activities for this specialism. This OS will be assessed through a series of synoptic assignments, which have been designed to be as occupationally realistic as possible, and they're externally set by NCFE. There are some important factors to consider for these assessments, which you can see on the screen now. For this assignment, please take note of the assessment requirements you can see, and as we progress through the detail of each assessment, we'll highlight any additional conditions staff should be aware of. So this occupational specialism will be assessed through the series of assignments, which have been designed to be as occupationally realistic and relevant as possible. This video will focus on assignment 3, and this assignment is about maintaining the digital security of an organisation. So the resources providers will need to provide for their students to complete this assignment are shown on the screen now. James, can I just bring in your subject specialist knowledge to highlight any important points related to any of these task resources, please?
Of course, yeah. So I don't think there's really anything within the resources that should trip anyone up. I think these are all fairly standard. I suppose one thing I just wanted to touch on is what you've just mentioned around the fact that the scenario of the assessment is designed to be as realistic as possible, and that really is important because obviously the students at this point are sitting their occupational specialism assessments in a matter of weeks, a couple of months. They could be out there in the sector. And so it's really important to remember that 2 things. One, that when we develop these assessments, we do it in partnership with organisations from the sector, but also that, as you're going to hear throughout this section, the tasks give the student a lot of flex for them to showcase what they've learned essentially over the last couple of years. There's not necessarily specific answers that we're looking for. We're giving the student the opportunity to flex their knowledge and to show us what they've learned. So bear that in mind. It's not as simple as a sort of a 1 + 1 = 2 type approach. This is really for them to show where they can excel.
Absolutely, James, and thank you for highlighting those really important links to industry, because all assessments for the T-level have those at their core, and applying those skills and knowledge to a context is really important. Thank you. Okay, assignment 3 consists of 4 separate tasks that occur on fixed dates and times specified by NCFE, and the dates for each task can be found in the key date schedule. And for the summer 2025 series, the date for task 1 is shown on the screen now. So students will work independently under supervised conditions. Internet access is not allowed, and if students have any access arrangements or reasonable adjustments, such as additional time for assessments, then providers should apply that internally, increase the task times by the relevant amount. The assessment material should only be made available to students during the scheduled sessions, so do take account of this and ensure you have secure storage areas for your students' evidence. And the evidence requirement for each student is on the screen now. Assignment 3 is worth a total of 56 marks, and marks are awarded against the skills and knowledge performance outcomes shown. Students will have a total of 5 hours and 30 minutes to use this information in the assignment brief to carry out the work required and demonstrate their knowledge and skills. There are 20 marks allocated for this first task, and POs 1 and 3 are assessed. You can see how the marks are allocated to each PO. James, can I ask you to summarise a typical project brief or activities for this, please?
Absolutely. So we're still continuing on with the same scenario as the rest of the assignments in this context. And the focus here for task 1 is around security risk assessment. So we're going to ask the students to perform a security risk assessment on the site and the network, and they're going to be recommending physical, administrative, and technical controls. We really want to see them explain why the recommendations will protect the network, and I'd like them to be thinking about what the threat might be, what the damage or what damage that could cause, and what could be done to mitigate that threat. So this is what I was alluding to before, where there's not really a right answer per se. It's not a template. It's about what they can identify as the potential problem and then what they would do about it.
Lovely, thank you, James. Okay, so moving on to the second and third tasks for this assignment. Students will have a total of 90 minutes to complete the tasks at a set date and time. And again, the summer 2025 dates can be seen on the screen now. And be aware these do change each year, so do check the key date schedule we mentioned earlier. Moving on to the assessment requirements, internet access is not allowed for this task. Task 2 is only to be provided once the students have completed task 1, and this must be completed in one session. And once task 2 has been completed, the students can be given the next one, task 3. Moving into the tasks in a bit more detail, the marks awarded and how they relate to the performance outcomes can be seen on the screen for task 2, and the same for task 3. James, please talk us through what the students would do typically for this task, or these tasks, sorry.
So for task 2, we're focusing on the security policy report. And the scenario here is to assist your manager in writing a security policy document. And they're asking you to consider the kinds of controls that should be included in a security policy, because essentially there's no policy at Willow Technologies. That's the issue. So we're going to ask the student to submit a report that includes recommendations for controls that could be included in that security policy. We're looking for things like administrative controls to be implemented and the reasons for choosing the controls they have chosen, a description of how each control will be enforced within the business, and a note of any legislation, regulation, or standards related to each control where appropriate. If we're thinking about task 3 at this point as well, Helen.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll move on. So there's now a sort of a sub scenario where there's been a flood. So we're shifting gears now, or maybe continuing really. We're thinking about BCP and DRA. So there's been a flood, and we want the student to focus on recommendations that maintain business continuity, so the business continuity planning and disaster recovery. So restoring operations ahead of financial concern. So we're going to ask them to write a business continuity document with recommendations in case of flooding, and disaster recovery with the recommendations in case of flooding. So I should really say continued flooding. The scenario is that there's already been a flood, and we're now worried that it's going to be continued flooding. So we're sort of applying a very specific criteria and essentially saying to the students, what can we do about it? How can we make sure that this doesn't affect us again?
Lovely, thank you, James. And just as you were talking there, I brought up the evidence requirements because it was linking to what you were saying there. So lovely, thank you for that. Okay, moving on to the fourth and final task for this assignment related to hardening the network. Students have a total of 2 hours to complete this task, again at a set date and time, And the summer 2025 date and time can be seen on the screen now. These do change each year, so just a reminder to check the key date schedule. Moving on to the assessment requirements, again, internet access is not allowed. However, access is available for this task to allow students to download any software that they consider necessary to secure or harden the server. And there's also a requirement for submitting their browsing history. James, is anything subject specific that you'd like to mention here, or is that sufficient?
I mean, so it's certainly sufficient from a guidance perspective, just to focus on the nature of task 4. This is around the hardening of the network. So again, we're sort of thinking about future proofing it. We want the students to be thinking about encryption, antivirus, access controls, who's got access to what, should they need that, or do they need that, I suppose is a better way of saying that. And then we're going to ask them to actually implement those changes. So again, this is an opportunity for the students really to kind of flex and to show that they truly understand what we're trying to assess here. There's a real opportunity for them to fly on this one.
Showcase. Yeah, showcase their skills and knowledge. Thank you, James. The marks awarded, how they relate to the POs, can be seen on the screen now. And then, James, is anything else you can add in terms of the brief or activities for task 4?
No, it's really about that future proofing or network hardening, as we call it. So it's kind of a continuation really of that assessment. I think what you'll draw out from the scenario is essentially that we're starting to see holes or gaps in Willow's business, I suppose, essentially. And we're sort of saying, you know, we're guiding the student down this path to kind of say, look, this is not as perfect as it can be. What would great look like? And that's really what we're sort of drawing at for task 4.
Lovely, thank you. And finally, the evidence requirements for task 4 can also be seen on the screen now. So this slide shows a section of the website you'll find the support and sample assessment materials on. This includes specimen assignment briefs, guide standard exemplification materials. This includes sample student assignments showing what a pass and distinction looks like for each of the sample assignments. And you'll also find here the previous live assessments. And we've also included the links to the current QSID and key date schedule, which can also be found on the NCFE website. James, before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to add about assignment 3, please?
Only my go-to is look at the past papers, look at the SAMs, have the students do those. It will really help to prepare them for their actual assessment.
Excellent, thank you. So we hope we found this useful and got a better understanding of assignment 3. Please do see the other bite-sized videos that form part of this occupational specialism series. And you can see on the screen now there's a QR code to leave us feedback on how useful and relevant you found this recording. Thank you so much.